My name is Dr. Michael Yeadon. My original training was a first-class honours degree in biochemistry and toxicology, followed by a research-based PhD into respiratory pharmacology. And after that, I've worked my entire life on the research side of the pharmaceutical industry, both Big Pharma and also biotech. My specific focus has been inflammation, immunology, allergy, in the context of respiratory diseases, so the lung, but also the skin. A test called a PCR test is performed on that, and what they're looking for isn't the virus. You might think it's looking for the virus, but it's not. What they're looking for is a small piece of genetic sequence. It's called RNA. Unfortunately, that bit of RNA will be found in people's tonsils and nose, not if they've just caught the virus and they're about to get ill or they're already ill. It's also going to be found if they were infected previously, weeks or even sometimes a small number of months ago. Let me just explain why that is. If you've been infected and you've fought off the virus, which most people do, you'll have broken, dead bits of virus. These are tiny things, smaller than your cells, perhaps spread all the way through your airway, embedded in bits of mucus, maybe inside an airway lining cell. And so over a period of weeks or months, you bring up cells that contain broken, dead pieces of the virus that you have conquered and killed. However, the PCR test is not able to detect whether the viral RNA has come from a living virus or a dead one, as I've just described. So I think a large proportion of the so-called positives are in fact what I call cold positives. They're correctly identifying that there is some viral RNA in the sample, but it's from a dead virus. It can't hurt them. They're not going to get ill. They can't transmit it to anybody else, so they're not infectious. So that accounts for a large number of the so-called positive cases. These are people who've beaten the virus. Why are we using this test that cannot distinguish between active infection and people who've conquered the virus? This test has never been used in this way, and I've worked in this field. It's not a suitable technique. It's the kind of technique you would use for forensic purposes. If you were trying to do a DNA test to establish whether or not a person was at the scene of a crime, you would not be doing these tests by a windy supermarket car park in what looks like plastic marquee tents on picnic tables. It's not suitable at all, and it definitely shouldn't be done in the way it's being done. It's subject to many mechanical errors, shall we say, handling errors. If this was a test being used for legal purposes, for forensic purposes, like a DNA identity test, the judge would throw out this evidence, would say it's not admissible. It produces positives even when there's no virus there at all. We call that a false positive. As we've increased the number of tests done per day, so we've had to recruit less and less experienced laboratory staff, and now we're using people who've never worked professionally in this area. What that does is it increases the frequency of mistakes, and the effect of this is that the false positive rate rises and rises. This test is monstrously unsuitable for detecting who has live virus in their airway. It's subject to multiple distortions, and we have to pull ourselves out of this. And I personally believe the way forward is twofold. It's not difficult. One, we should cease mass testing of the mostly well in the community immediately. It only provides misleading and grey information, and yet we're driving policy almost completely based on it. It's definitely wrong. Should not do it. Use the tests in hospital. I'm not saying don't test. Don't continue mass testing, and for God's sake, don't increase the number of tests. It is a pathology all of its own, which must be stamped out by right-thinking people. And I'm afraid the people on SAGE who have provided the modelling, the predictions, the measures that should be taken, that their work is so badly and obviously flawed, lethally incompetent, that you should have no more to do with these people. They should be fired immediately. And the effect of that advice has been to have cost lots of innocent people their lives from non-COVID causes. They should be dismissed and reconstituted using an appropriate group of skilled individuals, especially avoiding any who might even have the suggestion of a conflict of interest. I think we're right at the edge of the precipice, and I I really hope that we can pull back